There's power in taking a photograph. There's power in being an artist.
It's the Phoenix Film Revival Podcast.
Welcome back to another episode of the Phoenix Film Revival Podcast. I'm your host, Daniel Yanacone, and I have my lovely wife, Stacy.
Hello.
And she is going to fill us in on the details with this guy named Talbot.
Yeah, William Henry Fox Talbot.
Got enough names in his name?
There's a lot of names in the name. we'll just call him Talbot. Talbot, but yeah.
Yeah, Talbot is a interesting guy. He is not alive anymore. He's been dead for a very long time.
He has been dead. He's been dead since 1877. So
that was a while ago.
It's been a while. Yes. Yes. He has been gone for a while. But as Dan states, I will be schooling. Dan's going to sit back a little bit.
Yeah.
Dan's not feeling good.
Tired. It's been a long week.
He's got a bit of a tummy ache. There might have been a burrito involved.
Yep. Got a burrito belly.
It happens. But Dan's here with me, but
Yes. I'm half awake, but Stacy's together.
He's trying his best.
Yep.
And that's all we can ask.
So Talbot is a guy.
He's a guy.
Is involved with photography.
He's involved with photography. Yep.
He did some stuff with paper.
He did some stuff with paper. Correct.
And that's about it.
I love it. Dan that's all we need. That's it. All. Podcast over. Dan just told you everything you need to know about him.
He did some stuff with paper and photography.
He absolutely did.
I should know a lot more about Talbot, honestly. I've been doing paper negatives for like ages. And I should probably know a little bit more about him, but I guess you're here to fill us in.
Yeah. Well, our form of paper negatives is different than his form of paper negatives at the time. But yeah, the same thing. I mean, that's actually one of my favorite things. Like whenever I was starting with film, I didn't start with film. I was starting with paper. Yeah, actually, I started with the direct positive paper, which is kind of crazy that I started with that because that paper has a weird, if you've ever used that paper, the ISO is a lot lower than it is like regular photo paper is like 12-ish, and then direct positives like 3-ish ISO. So you need
1 to 3.
Yeah, you need quite a bit more light on that, and it's super contrasty, that paper. Yeah. So it's sort of difficult to work with. Yeah, and I never work with doing chemicals or anything like that. So I was going straight to. I was like very confused at the beginning, but I really do like paper. I like paper a lot, and I like the paper negatives.
It's kind of slept on. There's not a lot of people who realize that paper negatives are such an amazing means of shooting and, getting an image, especially with the 4x5 camera. I started off with a view camera and was like, how the hell am I going to afford film? Mm-hmm. How am I going to develop it? How am I going to, afford to buy it? And then how am I going to scan it? And then how am I going to print it if I don't have a 4x5, enlarger to print from? So huge challenge there. And I remember from high school that, you make a pinhole camera and you use the paper instead of the film. And it's a lot easier, cheaper, easier to handle. And I kind of continued that out of high school and shot that on my 4x5. And the results that I was getting was insane. Definitely a challenge to shoot certain scenery. The sky gets blown out, or portraits might look a little different
because of the red spectrum. So
it's an ortho film essentially, and you lose that red spectrum with that. So I don't know. I really enjoyed it and was surprised at the resolution you get, because at that point you can shoot it in your camera. You can then tray process it, which doesn't take that long.
Under the red light, so you can see it. You don't need any special tanks.
Yeah. And then you basically take it out, let it dry, and then
flatbed scan. You don't
Flatbed.
need like a special scanner. You can
Yeah.
flatbed scan and then just turn it into a negative, and bam, there you are.
Yeah, no special software needed. You just take it into Photoshop and do an inversion and then adjust your levels to get your contrast and your tones just right. And what's amazing is the tonal value that you have with paper. It's insane.
Yeah.
I wasn't expecting that when I was shooting. And when I inverted it and then made adjustments, I'm like, I have so much information here to work with.
Yeah.
You'd think that it would be really limited. And the direct positive paper is.
Yeah, that is for sure. Yeah, the direct positives definitely it's got limitations in a lot of ways.
Yeah.
But yeah, the actual, silver gelatin printing paper, though, however, amazing. It's kind of amazing how well it looks. Like, I think a lot of people just think traditionally they think pinhole, like pinhole is the only kind of method, but honestly, you can use that paper for anything. I like popping it in the back of like cameras that just don't have film sizes anymore, like 1/16, or I have like one of those giant fold out Kodak cameras. I forget the model there of that, but it takes that gigantic sized roll.
4x5 paper, 620.
Practically, yeah. It used to be a roll, and it's I can't remember the name or the number there, but you just cut a sheet of paper and put it in the back. And my goodness, I mean, a sheet of like 8x10 photo paper. I mean, prices have definitely gone up, but you're looking at probably a little bit over $1 a sheet.
Yeah.
With that. And then if you're cutting it down into like different cameras, you can get so many shots off of that.
It was about 25 cents a shot when I was shooting it. Mm-hmm. And I mean, for 4x5, just shooting it is like $5. Developing it, another $5. Getting a decent scan of it, like minimum $10. And so you're at $20 a shot versus 25 cents. Like, how can you?
Seriously,
that's a huge difference.
Especially if you're just starting and you're like, I want to just kind of get to know this format, and like, you don't want to spend a ton of money.
Right.
It's such an easy way to get into it. It really is. And it looks amazing. Yeah. It is weird that a lot of people, I very rarely see that people are using that.
Yeah.
And doing it. I think people just don't think about it. I think a lot of folks that maybe shoot that have never done, they're just doing primarily film and they're sending it out and they're developing it, things like that. And they never really touch the printing portion of a darkroom.
Yeah.
So I don't think the paper's top of mind because they don't print. So they don't really think about it. And I think people that do print maybe are just thinking, oh, well, it's going to be, I need a negative.
Right. Yeah.
To get this positive on it, not thinking, oh, I can actually use the paper as a negative.
Yeah. I actually did a project. So I went up to Monument Valley and I had my 4x5 camera with me. Actually the same one that we used for the booth. Mm-hmm. And this was 2017, I think it was. And there was an eclipse during that. We just had an eclipse today.
Yeah, we did.
Which is,
I looked right in the sun and I didn't see it.
I was still asleep. I
tried to wake you. I tried to wake you up. I was
Yeah.
like, "There's an eclipse." I legitimately went outside and I like looked really quick. I'm like, "Okay, I know I'm not supposed to do this."
It's fine.
Who needs eyes? I don't need eyes, but I couldn't. Just FYI, you can't see it with your. You look at it directly. It was very.
Doesn't work like that.
It doesn't work like that. But no, go on.
Yeah. So I remember shooting the eclipse in 2017 with my camera. I was trying to find an image of it earlier, but just didn't look too great. It was just a little half moon that was black on the paper.
That's still pretty great. Yeah.
I was like, oh yeah, there's an eclipse on paper. But there was another shot I took, which was actually both positive and negative. And then what I did was I took both of those and I made a composite, which means you take both those images and overlay them together to create, an image that has more range, essentially. So the downside with the standard paper that you shoot with and use in a darkroom is going to be that you blow out your highlights. So your sky, which is blue, is going to be blown out. So you lose any cloud detail. And then everything else might be metered okay. So what you have to do is then either shoot again with a paper negative and do shorter, but there's challenges with the exposure there. So I was like, I'll shoot with the positive paper, and I'll shoot the same exposure again, and then that way I get the sky and the clouds and more detail, and it actually turned out all right. It looked pretty good.
So you use the direct positive, and you use
just a standard Ilford
the standard multigrade.
Yep.
And then you put them together.
Yep.
After the fact, after scanning.
Yeah. And
that's great. It probably looked kind of amazing with the merge.
It looked pretty good. I did have to do a little work on the shadows to just, bring it up a little bit, but the information was there, which was nice. But definitely an interesting process.
Definitely cheaper. Well, minus the direct positive, that's gone up in price by quite a bit. We're running. How much are we at shot now on that?
Jeez.
It's like $1.50.
It's about almost $40 for a pack of 25. So we're pushing $1.50 a sheet at this rate.
It's been going up.
Yeah.
So the direct positive, but if you're looking for paper, I would say honestly, like direct positive, don't even have to do it. Go straight to right to the paper. Just buy a box. You can buy a small box of the paper.
Yeah. The Ilford Multigrade is a pretty good film to use or paper to use.
Yep.
And indoor shots are going to be easy to work with if you have a hot light or even strobes. I mean, strobes, you really don't need too much. But what's nice too is that you get some fall off. So if you shoot outside, you're gonna have to shoot potentially closer to like an F-22 or something in order to get get it just right. But I don't know.
It's cool. And I used it when I did the Mr. Potato Head show. Yeah. Because Mr. Potato Head, I would put the paper in his butt, like his little area where he put all of his pieces. And that was a really small, like I just cut it down to like, 2 inches by 3 inches, something like that. And a whole sheet, like an 8x10 sheet, I got like so many pieces. So I had this big pile that I would able to use. I mean, I had to load them up individually and then tape his butt together and do it in a dark bag outside. Like that's a thing, but still like so much cheaper. And I can't like to manufacture and make it so film ran through them was like, but hot tip, if somebody feels like it, you can get a Mr. Potato Head now. Not the old ones. Old Mr. Potato Heads used to be bigger. The newer style are smaller sized like potatoes. But the newer style, you could fit, and I was trying different things out, you can fit a 120 roll between his arms.
Yep.
Where you can actually put it between the arms, the stubs of the arms that go into it, and put the reel in there. And if you turn an arm, it will turn the reel. So somebody just has to like maybe 3D manufacture a piece that holds the other side that goes up into his noggin.
Potato mod.
You could totally mod a potato.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like, I mean, I got him doing photos just by sealing him up and making him into a pinhole. Like the pinhole was with his nose or whatever, but super cute. But yeah, I remember being like, oh man, you could almost do it. Like if I was a little, I just don't have that knowledge of a 3D printing or anything. But someone totally could do that. Yeah. It would fit inside there, which is pretty
Just got to watch out. Hasbro will come after you.
I know. Seriously, right? I haven't gotten any letters.
Don't want that.
No. Actually, that'd be kind of cool. If I got like sued by a major company and I put their letter up on my wall, like a cease and desist.
Yeah.
Yeah. Cool.
Cred. Street cred.
Street cred. Yeah.
You're cool when you have a cease and desist.
Yeah. Yeah. There's some conversation recently that we won't go into on this podcast.
Yeah.
But people have heard the Cinestill stuff.
Cinestill.
Little reference to that. But
yeah. Sadly, there's drama.
There's drama. There's always drama with something. But film, usually it's kind of fun when film gets some drama because there's not much of it. Honestly.
Depends on
besides having, shortages and prices going up and eliminations of film, but this was kind of an interesting one that came up recently. But if you look online and just put in Cinestill, you can find the deets on that. We don't want to get into it mostly because there's a lot of pieces to it and a lot of it's just people talking and it's hard to tell what's what and what's real and what's not real, and it's rumor stuff. We don't get involved with that crap.
Yeah,
that's not my business. I don't own Cinestill. I don't even shoot color for that matter. So I don't care.
Always something.
There's always something.
But yeah, we're talking about paper.
Yeah. So Talbot, back to Mr. Lots of Names, William Henry Fox Talbot. He was English.
Yes.
Hence that very
Sounds about right.
It does. It sounds very English, doesn't it? So he's basically the father of the negative positive photography on papers, how he had it. So up until this point, we had Daguerre and we had Nepis, and they were doing, positive. I mean, if you look at a daguerreotype and you look at Nepis's work, they looked like they were negatives, but in reality, they weren't negatives. They were positives that just had to be kind of viewed at the right angle. But anyway, so Talbot was actually the person that did the first negative, positive, and reproducible photos. So super duper duper important. Yeah. So Talbot was a really interesting guy. This guy was a smart cookie for sure. This guy was super intelligent. He was born into a wealthy family. They were super established. They were sort of like high up dudes, they knew everybody. A lot of scientists and artists and, the people of England back in the day. And Talbot himself, he went to Cambridge University. He went to Trinity College. He was a scientist himself. He was into art and botany, ancient languages, astronomy. He published 4 books, and he had all kinds of articles that he had written, mathematics, Egyptology, botany, philosophy. He was a member of parliament for a while. Jeez. This guy was prolific. Like, he was just a really smart guy. And it's kind of great because there's a lot of correspondence that he had with a lot of people. So being able to kind of dig up information about him is, I'm not going to say easy. It's like, you still got to dig. But there's a lot of information about this guy. So it's kind of nice because there's just like, he wrote to everybody and their bird. I'll talk about it later, but there's a project that's going on that's trying to digitize a lot of his letters, and they have about 10,000 of his letters that they're trying to digitize from about. They were basically like over the span of his life. So
that's like emails. That's like my inbox on emails.
for handwritten letters, this quite a bit. Yeah, a lot of back and forth. But yeah, so this dude was a smart dude. So everything with the photography part of this, it actually started on his honeymoon. So Henry got married, and he was with his wife and a couple of his sisters, which actually, I believe, stepsisters. But he was with his wife, Constance, and they were in Italy for their honeymoon, and they were literally walking around Lake Como, and they were drawing. So Constance was an artist, and so were the sisters, and they could draw and they could paint and watercolor. And everybody was doing their little art thing, and Talbot couldn't draw. He didn't have that in him. He just couldn't draw. He could do a lot of things, but Talbot could not draw. So he was trying to use a camera lucida, which is basically like a drawing assistance tool. They still make these things like for drawing. They're almost like a mirror system where it's, projecting the image onto the mirror and then back down onto the paper, the surface, and then you kind of trace the image. So it's like this prism type device that you would use to do drawing assistance. So he was really frustrated. He was trying to do that. He was trying to use this thing, and he really, really wasn't happy. He was not happy about it at all. And there's even a quote that he had from the time. He said, "When the eye was removed from the prism in which all had looked beautiful, I had found the faithless pencil only left traces on the paper, melancholy to behold." He was bummed. He was really bummed about it. He was very unhappy that he couldn't get the drawing, and mostly because of his wife Constance being so good at it. So you can also look up Constance. So Constance Talbot, you can find her paintings, and she did a lot of watercolors. She was pretty cool. We could talk about her for a second. So technically speaking, she would be the first woman to take a photo, because she was married to him and because he would invite her to kind of help him. She assisted him a lot of the time when he was working. So
how romantic.
I know. I was like, that's kind of nice, right? So, but they were artists. They were both artists and scholars. They were doing cool stuff. I'm just thinking like how cool it'd be with these people. Like, just listing all the things that he was like really good at and smart at, and like she's an artist and he's an artist but yet a scholar too, and scientist. Like those people had to have been so fun to hang out with.
Yeah.
Like
I like
cool.
how he writes about drawing.
I know, it's so sad the way he says he's so bummed. You feel the bummed. Like, he actually wrote that in a book that we'll actually talk about the book later. But he wrote that was in his book, and it said the faithless pencil, melancholy to behold. He was just so upset he couldn't do it, even with that.
I know the feels, so I can't draw either.
I know, same. I'm like, I wish that's one thing. But you know, that's one of those skills where I've definitely heard like that's a skill. I mean, there's a certain amount of inherent talent that you have to do that. But at the same time, if you don't know the basics, and you know, you can be taught to a certain extent with that. Practice, right? So, but Constance, she was pretty cool. So she is credited for the most part of being the first woman to take a photo. Like I said, because of this, you know, relationship that we had. And I kind of love the photo that she took, her first one. She chose to take a picture of a poem, and it was from a family friend, Thomas More, and one of his poems. So she took a manuscript, the original manuscript, and then she placed it on top of the treated paper and then exposed it in the sun. But there, you know, it's a longer poem, but I want to read like just the first kind of section of it because I really thought it was nice. 'Tis the last rose of summer, left blooming alone. All of her lovely companions are faded and gone. I like that.
Oh.
That was really nice, especially because like what she took it on very much faded.
Yeah.
Like it's been faded away. Like it still exists, but it's pretty faded. But anyways, she was pretty much working with him at the whole time. And it's speculated that she actually did take a lot of photos, but it's a little fuzzy on what was hers and what was his at this point. They think most was his, but they know for sure some of those were Constance's. Which is pretty cool. So shout out to Constance for being in there too, doing stuff just as well. She was, you know, you got the wife support and it's good.
Yep.
So as soon as Talbot came back from his honeymoon, he wanted to start working on photography basically. And he had written down, and like I said, this guy wrote all kinds of stuff and kept lots of notes. He wrote, "How charming would it be if it were possible to cause these natural images to imprint themselves durably and remain fixed on paper." So he was like, you know, thinking like, I got to do this. And it's very much like Napis was and Daguerre where they were using camera obscura, and they had the same thought where they're like, man, if I could just capture this, you know, he was thinking the same thing. So he was really treating paper. So he was using paper, and he was just using all kinds of various chemicals, just trying to see if he could capture an image through the light and the chemistry that he was putting on there. And eventually he did create photograms where, you know, photograms are whenever you have the sensitized paper and you put an object directly on it, and then you get a silhouette of the object.
Right.
So he was doing all kinds of stuff with like plants and lace and flowers and all that. And he called them, he named it, he called them photogenic drawings, which is pretty accurate, but you know, they're really only silhouettes at that point. And he was using a solution of table salt. So he would do a table salt and then brush it on one side and let it dry. And then he would add silver nitrate, which would create silver chloride. And then silver chloride would darken when it was in light. So that's what he was doing. And then he started putting this paper into wood boxes and started using lenses. So he was, you know, branching out from just doing silhouettes and things. And Constance, his wife, she actually called them mouse traps because he was leaving them kind of all over the place, all over their house. So they were everywhere. Like you would walk around and there'd just be a camera here, camera there, camera there. She would have that.
He's got gas.
Yeah. So if you remember too, like, you know, Nessifor, he was also doing silver salts you know, during his experimentation. But he couldn't actually stop the darkening. That was a big frustration to him. Like he could capture it and he knew it was there, but then it went away. Right. And that was a big part of his problem as well. But Talbot actually had found ways to chemically stabilize his process, which was really great. And then he officially announced the photogenic drawing process in 1839, and he shared his process with everybody in full and told them, hey, I can do this. Look at this. This is what you do. Here's all the steps, which is really cool. Later on, though, he improved the process. So it was much better, and he actually called it the Calotype process. And that's what we know of about him today as the person that came with the Calotype process. He also called it the talbotype at one point, which is kind of funny. Calotype is a lot prettier. It's from Greek, so callous means beautiful. So I think that's a little...
Honey, you're callous.
You're callous. You're callous. Yeah, but the Calotype's nice, but talbotype, all the guys after themselves, right?
Yeah.
That's how it be. So I guess I could talk a little bit about how the Calotype process works.
Yes.
And what he did. So he would iodize a sheet of writing paper, and think writing paper, like back in the day, writing paper was valuable and very nice, like not quite the, writing paper nowadays. So he would iodize a sheet of writing paper, and he would apply silver nitrate and potassium iodine to the surface. He'd do this under candlelight, and then he'd wash it and dry it. And then he would sensitize the surface using gallonitrate of silver solution. And then he would dry it again. And then he would load it into the camera, and then he would expose to the light. Then he would remove the paper, and then he'd brush it with the sanitizing solution again to bring out the desired density. And then he'd rinse the negative in water, and then wash it with a solution of potassium bromide. And then he'd rinse it again. So that was basically the Calotype process, which you can still do today. Fairly safe as well. It's not that bad. Some of these other ones, like we were saying about the heat of mercury and everything with Daguerre, which is a little scary.
Right.
So Calotypes, they look like they're very matte. They're on paper. They don't look like they're on the surface. They look like the image is actually embedded into the paper, kind of similar to Cyanotype. Cyanotype's the same kind of thing. Just that it's blue, and the ISO is way different. But yeah, really, really pretty. They almost have like a light brownish kind of color to them. Really pretty. So later on, though, he did change. He had his fixing solution. He changed it to hyposulfate of soda, and that was recommended to him. Speaking of cyanotypes, he was friends with John Herschel, and John Herschel was the inventor of the cyanotype. And John Herschel, also a scientist, which we definitely have to get into him. I
think we'll do his next.
Yeah, he's a very cool guy. He was, once again, these dudes are all scientists, right? So so he helped him with the fixing. But cyanotype, if you're not familiar, that's the blue process. I do a lot of cyanotypes. That's my online Instagram and website, Cyanotyped.
Yep.
So with a D. So I love Cyanotype. But that's basically, cyanotypes are cameraless, so you don't use a camera at all. People try to put cyanotype paper in cameras. It doesn't work very well. But it's cameraless for the most part, and really you lay an object or, a nice negative of some sort onto the paper, and it's iron salts that are exposed to UV, and then you wash away, and then you get this really pretty Prussian blue. But anyway, so he was in with Herschel, and Herschel knew what he was doing, and Herschel helped out as well. The problem is with the photos that they fade. They fade quite a bit, actually. They're still there, but you can't see them great. And a lot of the ones that still exist, a lot of them, they keep them in dark rooms under red lights because they want to not have it fade anymore. They don't want to expose it in any way to kind of keep the, from fading any more than they already have. But he took a lot of photos that were really beautiful. So up until this point, Daguerre was pretty good. Daguerre had a fairly good eye, but he didn't do a lot of photography. He kind of stopped once he got the process out, right? But he had some, he may have been able to take some beautiful photos. But Talbot actually did take quite a few photos, and they were really good. He had a really good eye for photography, so they were actually really pretty. which was nice. But he took a lot of landscape and family member pictures and sculptures, and he took a lot on his where he lived. And where he lived was Lawcock Abbey, which exists. It's in England or outside of, where is it at? I'm going to forget now. So it's in England. It's near Bath is where it's at, actually. So the first recorded paper photograph exists still, and that was an image that he did outside the window from Lawcock Abbey, where he lived. So it was the oriel window in the south gallery of Lawcock Abbey, and the image itself was about, give or take, 3 to 4 inches, 3 by 4, as far as the size. The negative, it still exists. It's currently housed at the Met, which is cool, in New York, but it's not on view right now. But they have it. I can't even imagine what they have that's not on view there. The amount of stuff that they have that is on view, it's like,
Oh, insane.
man, that museum is crazy. Did you get to the Met? I don't think you got to the Met. Yeah, it's like one of those things you get to one. You were some other museum though. You go to a museum, you end up there all day, and then you don't go. But anyone that's ever been to the Met, like I've been to the Met many, many times, and I have. Pretty certain I have still not seen that entire building. There's just so much. But anyway, squirreled away is this picture, which is pretty cool. And he had quoted with Talbot, he said, in this building, I believe to be the first that was ever known to have drawn its own picture. And it's really just a look at the window. It's very silhouette-y, the photo. You just see a photo and you can tell it's very bright outside, and he's in the room by quite a bit. Like the camera looks like it's in the room, probably maybe like, maybe 5 feet in. Like, so you're seeing like the silhouette of the actual window and then the bright light. So it's not the greatest photo, but it is, you can tell what it is. You can see that it's a window looking outside, but very cool. So the building itself, Lawcock Abbey, I hope I'm saying that right. I'm so bad with my pronunciation of everything, but it's just L-A cock. Lecoq. I'm sure it's not called Lecoq, but I'd like it to be, but it's not. So that building's kind of amazing. So that building itself has been around since about the 1200s. So it's a medieval abbey, basically. Neat. It was a nunnery at one point. And it's gone through a ton of like additions and renovations, and it's had a lot added onto it. But the Talbot family had lived there. So, because they were, well-to-do. Now, though, you can go there. You can still go there, and you could actually go to the Fox Talbot Museum, which is really cool.
It's cool.
And the town it's in, it's Wiltshire, England. So it's, like I said, not too far out away from Bath. But the museum itself, it celebrates Talbot and all his contributions to photography. It has exhibits about him. You can still see his mousetrap cameras, which is cool. And they go about, the history of early photography and the chemical processes and all that fun stuff. So it's interesting, too, because if you're like, the Abbey, that may look cool. You've already probably seen it. You have seen it. I'm sure you have. Yeah. So it's been in a lot of movies. So it's been in 3 Harry Potter movies. Downton Abbey, it was featured. Fantastic Beasts, which is like one of those Harry Potter spin-off movies, and Pride and Prejudice, which is really cool. But the Harry Potter, if you ever think of like the beautiful outside, like a cloisters looking walkway that has like the beautiful columns of like stone, like curved stone, that's what you're looking at. You're actually looking at that abbey, which is really kind of cool connection there. And if you ever go there and you go to the museum, you could actually stay. There's a Talbot House bread and breakfast that's there, which is really cool. And it's only 110 pounds a night. And it has like amazing reviews. So you could actually stay on the property if you'd like. Yeah, so I thought that was pretty cool. I was like, oh, wow, okay, I do know that place. I've seen that. Like, as soon as you look it up, you're like, oh, okay.
That makes sense now.
It makes sense now. Yeah, so really, really pretty property. So going back to Talbot, so all the timelines here start smushing together with all these, photographers and processes and things that people were doing. So Talbot was completely unaware that Daguerre was working on his process in France. at the time. And technically speaking, Talbot may have been a little farther ahead than Daguerre with his process. But there was definitely overlap on that. And then Daguerre came out with that description of the process, and the French government were like, hey, free to the world. And they came up with the, saying, hey, this is what it was. And that was in 1839. And Talbot definitely, at this point, he had already had something, because his picture of the Abbey, give or take, was probably 1835 when he actually took it. So he may have been a little bit farther ahead, or just barely doing his process, which is interesting. So if, he had announced it sooner to people, like he may have been known as the founder of photography and not Daguerre. So it's kind of interesting. Although Daguerre still probably has the first person in a picture, because I don't think he might have. Like I said, there's some overlap there for sure. But as history will remember, it's going to be Daguerre as the first person to, kind of be the first founder and the first person to take a picture of a person. But anyway.
Especially with the fidelity that you get with that process.
Yeah. Daguerre's process definitely looks better. Gotta say, it definitely does. But the utilitarian usage of the calotype at the time, much better. Like having it on paper and making it so you can reproduce, because you have a negative, and then at that point you just have to put another sanitized piece of paper on top and expose to light, and bam, you got the second one. Yeah. So that's a good thing. Daguerre, you couldn't do that with daguerreotype. But man, did they look good. Oh, yes. Not that the calotypes didn't. The calotypes look dreamy is a word I would use for the calotypes. They look very dreamy. So Talbot actually wanted to patent the process. He decided, I should probably do that, right? So in 1841, he was wanting to earn a living, and kind of like Daguerre did. I mean, Daguerre basically got his money and sort of said, okay, it's fine. And he went off and painted for the rest of his days. He was just like, I'm done. I'm out. I made my money. It's cool. I'm getting my, my money every year. It's cool. It's kind of a modest living, but yeah, that's all right. And Talbot kind of wanted to do the same thing. He was like, this is great. I'd like to make some money off of this, and he wanted to patent it. And he kind of got a little bit of back and forth about that. He actually lost some friends in the process. Because people were thinking, no, this should be free. You don't, this isn't something that you keep to yourself. This shouldn't be something you monetize. So he did actually lose some friends on it. But his reckoning to it was that, he spent over 5,000 pounds basically over the years to do this process, and the chemicals and everything he put into it. And he really was just trying to kind of recoup expenses, is how he claimed was what he was doing when he was trying to kind of defend himself on this. He also was a little bit worried about money in a way, because despite his family being well off, he went from being very well off to his father had died when he was really young. He was actually not even one. And his father died, and his mom basically bounced around living with relatives, and they had no money for a very long time. And then she eventually remarried, and she married another man that was actually quite wealthy. Go mom. And then they were able to have money again. So, but he knew what not having money was like. So he was a little worried about it. But anyway, so his patent was really actually quite expensive. The patent cost about $10,000 today.
Jeez. In
today's money. And then that was if you wanted to use it in England and Wales. And then it cost even more if you were in Scotland or Ireland. Yeah, so it was kind of pricey. And it wasn't commercially as successful either, for reasons like we were stating before. They weren't as sharp as the daguerreotype. They faded. They just weren't as pretty, basically. In comparison, one looks okay, amazing, yeah, photo. And then the other one, whoa, that's a photo, Not only that, it's a beautiful photo.
The dynamic range that you get on a daguerreotype is significantly better than what you get with the calotype. Yeah. At least with, comparing those to each other back in the day. Oh, yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So commercially, it was great, but at the same time, he was competing against the daguerreotype, basically. So people were much more interested in that.
So he really only sold 2 of his licenses, though.
Oh, bummer.
I know. One was to his valet, and the other one was to Henry Collin. I thought it was kind of funny, his valet. He's like, I can imagine his valet's like helping him get dressed, and he's like, hey, you want to buy this? It's like, it's the valet, like he paid the valet, and then the valet paid him, right? It's like his own money. It's ridiculous. But so Talbot licensed Henry Collin. Henry Collin, kind of an amazing guy if you go into his history. So Henry Collin, he was a miniature portrait painter. So if you look back at that time period, if you look at like paintings of like Queen Victoria, things like that, he did a lot of that work. He was kind of tight with the royals and a lot of high class, like upper people. He was a really, really good artist. So he could paint people. He was sort of like the go-to, the photography didn't exist, but these people wanted pictures of themselves. So he would do that, but it was miniatures. He did like the little, like, carry along kind of portraits that you would have of people. So that was his jam. So he became the first calotypist, that's what they called them, to make the calotype, in London. And he had set up an actual studio with that. And it was really sort of, Talbot supplying the photography knowledge. And then Collin was doing the artistic portion of it with the studio. The problem was Talbot was taking about 30% of the profits out of it.
Jeez.
Which is quite a bit. But he was very popular. He did pretty well. I mean, even though he was losing money because of Talbot kind of taking a lot of money from him, he took over about 1,000 portraits through the studio when he set it up over. It wasn't that long. It was only a few years that he was open, but he had quite a few people that came through. And what they would do is they would take the calotype, and then Collin would paint on them to kind of make them better.
Right.
So they would actually look like this combination of, photo and painting, which was really cool. The problem is over time, though, because the calotype would fade, so anywhere that the paint wasn't, these things would start looking really uneven, like very strange, because like, the photo was fading, but yet the paint was still just vibrant and fine. But it was this really interesting mix of, the old way of painting and the new art of photography. So it's kind of a cool thing that he was doing. But yeah, it was weird. They had a weird relationship. I mean, obviously he was friends with him, like in the first place, but Talbot wasn't very good about sharing, the scientific stuff. And Collin was always trying to like kind of tweak things and make things better, but it never ended up really being profitable despite like, making some kind of fun work. So he had to close business. So he ended the business. But you can still find Collin's work for sure. So his photographic work, most of them are at the George Eastman House in Rochester, which once again, gotta get ourselves up there. So if anyone listening is anywhere near George Eastman House, like the museum and everything, go there. So much stuff there. So much important stuff. But a lot of Henry's work's there, and also at the Science Museum in London and the Fox Talbot Museum that we were talking about before. There's a lot of it there as well, which is really cool. And then interesting enough, and a little history side note, Collin was tasked with copying, because you could copy with this process, the Treaty of Nankin, which was kind of an important thing. This was the treaty whenever it was like Britain won the war with Hong Kong and China. And so the treaty gave Hong Kong to Britain and then allowed British free trade with merchants in China. And then it kind of ended the Opium Wars that were going on. So the Treaty of Nankin was kind of an important thing, but it was signed by Queen Victoria and it was signed by China, and he made copies. So there was 3 that were made, and one of them was hanging in Buckingham Palace, but apparently was discarded at some point, which is kind of amazing. Someone's like, who needs this? let's just trash this. It's kind of amazing. But I mean, because we were talking about before, people were trying to like fix the first photograph and they totally boiled it. it's just kind of funny. Like sometimes people don't know that stuff's historic or important, and it, you know, but it's just kind of funny because they're like pretty certain it got thrown away, which is hilarious.
Jeez.
And one of the other originals they know of right now, it's in a vault actually in Taiwan, is where that's hiding. So interesting with Henry. I like the little side note with him. His paintings are really cute. If you look at them, they're really good. They look like paintings, but they're like really fine art paintings. So he could really truly capture, you know, what people look like. And his work with Queen Victoria was actually really great too. But it's interesting that they turned to him and not directly to Talbot. They went to him instead, but is because he had such an in with the royals.
Right.
They knew him. They knew him really well. So they came right to him to actually do that work for them, which was cool. He actually had to do that work on Christmas Day just because the weird timing that it was. So on Christmas Day, he was actually making copies of that, which is kind of fun. So Talbot, he's, you know, still out there trying to work on this, trying to make some money from it and, you know, get some stuff going. So he really thought that, you know, people might want a photographic prints, and he had a project in mind, and his project was called The Pencil of Nature. So The Pencil of Nature, it's the first commercially published book that had illustrated photographs in it. First photo book. First one that existed. So
he was like, hey guys, buy my photo book.
Buy my photo book. Exactly. He was the first guy to hustle his own photo book, which was great. But no one had done that up to that point. You know, he had the photos. So it was the thing. So he published it in 6 installments, and it had 24 Calotype plates that were actually hand pasted into the book. He did quit before the 70th was made. It actually wasn't that successful commercially, which is kind of like looking back, you're like, wait, what? Like it wasn't. It had all the calotypes, and it basically documented the beginning of photography, and he had a text that went with all the photos, and he had predictions and ambitions for what photography would become, which was interesting. But people didn't seem to care. But it's super important, the book. It's really actually nowadays, you know, and looking back as time went on, people totally recognized it as a major contribution to history. The Met, they actually, quote unquote, said a milestone in the art of the book greater than any since Gutenberg's invention of the movable type. So they're like comparing it to like the Gutenberg Bible, like, you know, now, like it was important, you know, even though, you know, commercially at the time, people were like, you know,
might take a picture when we can just paint it.
We can just paint it. This photography stuff will never last. Who needs it? The photos in the book are actually quite amazing. You can look it up. We have a copy that we'll eventually get at our home that I've ordered. I just haven't got here yet. But yeah, really nice, really pretty, just really pretty images. 15 of the original books still are around. The Met, of course, they have a copy of it. It belonged to Talbot's daughter, and she had it, so it's her copy. And then 2 of the other copies right now, they're at the Lecoq Abbey, so they're also there. So that's pretty cool. I also don't think that's on view at the Met. I think it's just there at the Met. You can always look up what they have, like anything. You can look it up, and they'll tell you if it's on view or not. So he was, you know, he was really good at a lot of things. We've learned that drawing, not one of them. Also not a great businessman. He wasn't super great at that. He didn't know how to promote himself. He would chase down people for patents. So people that would be using his process, he would actually spend a lot of money defending it, like on lawyers and things. And he also never got supported by the government for it either. You know, Daguerre got completely backed by France, like all the way. And that just never happened in England for Talbot. So, I mean, he really never made any kind of substantial money for it. You know, it existed, but he never really made any money.
It's a bummer.
It's kind of a bummer.
A huge contribution. Yeah.
He also came up with what actually led to the carbon printing process, which is pretty cool. So he later on just determined that gelatin treated with potassium dichromate hardens in proportion to how much light it receives. which basically leads into carbon printing. And carbon printing, I'd love to try it, but it sounds very intimidating with all the steps.
It's like one of the most complex processes with printing, with photography in general.
Yeah, there's a lot. And I even wrote down here the steps because I kept on trying to when you read the steps and all the things, you're like, okay, you're trying to envision all of it. I'm like, man, this got a lot of stuff. But it's, so what it is so it depends on the light sensitivity of the dichrominated gelatin. So the light, it hardens with the light it receives, how much light it receives. And then it forms an image that consists of pigment that's in gelatin. So to make your carbon print, the paper was coated with a solution of gelatin and the potassium dichromate and pigment. And then once dry, the light sensitive carbon tissue, quote unquote, the paper, is placed in contact with the negative and exposed to light, and then locally hardening the carbon tissue. And then the exposed tissue is then transferred to paper support by wetting both papers, placing the tissue down onto the new paper and squeegeeing the pigmented film into firm contact. And then underwater, the exposed carbon tissue is carefully peeled away, and the unexposed pigmented gelatin dissolves in the bath, and then the positive carbon print is revealed on the new paper support. So
it sounds like the registration on that is a nightmare.
Yeah. So it's got some steps, but it's interesting. He kind of started that as well, because it kind of led to that. So that was sort of neat. And then, you can find out more with Talbot. So at the Victoria and Albert Museum in London, they have about 500 prints of his negatives. So that's pretty cool. They got 11 of his cameras, and they got a whole bunch of the copies as well of the Pencil of Nature. So you can actually see a lot of his work there. And then there's actually a project called the Correspondence of William Henry Fox Talbot Project. If you look that up online, you can find the website. And they're pretty much just digitizing and adding all of the letters that he has. And I was talking before, there's about 10,000 letters to and from Talbot from his span of his life. And they're getting them all together and they're digitizing them, and they're, people reading these handwritten letters and like contributing to the project and typing it out and annotating it and getting it all there. But if you ever want to do a deep dive on Talbot, you can absolutely do it just based off of all the letters that he had. Jeez. Which is cool. But yeah, good for Talbot. I feel a little bad for him that, he didn't quite get the fame and money that he was maybe looking for a little bit, but it seems like he was still pretty pleased with himself. Yeah. With what he did. And he kept photographing, which was great. I mean, he didn't just stop. Like, he kept photographing, and his photographs are actually very nice. Yeah.
That's good for him. Got to go out and take pictures with his invention.
Yeah. We always make the joke, like, going out and taking photos. What's that? I don't know.
What's that?
What is that? What?
Is this a photography?
That's why we like it in our booth, because we get like a little taste of like being able to take photos again. I mean, I just develop them, but still, one of these days.
Yeah.
I'm going to take a few more photos. I'm going to have to start taking them. I always joke, I'm like, I work from home, and then we have the lab and the grocery stores in between those two places. So I feel like I'm house, grocery store, lab, grocery store, house all the time. But I'm like, maybe I'll just start bringing my camera just to the three places. Yeah. Just taking pictures. There's photos to be had everywhere. Sometimes you feel like you have to put away like a separate, okay, on this day, I'm going to take photos. But in reality, I think a lot of photos just sort of happen when they happen.
Yeah.
Because often there's stuff from like, I should have had the film camera.
Gotta have your little point and shoot.
Me too. Yeah. I never use the point and shoot though.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's never my jam though. I mean, that's always color too. I don't shoot color.
You can load. You can refill and do that. But yeah, I never think of bringing one. I used to carry one all the time, and before digital cameras, I used to have a disposable in my car, because that was always the thing. Like,
if you get into a crash, like nowadays you can take video and like show, insurance, like exactly what happened, like the position of the cars and everything. But back in the day, there wasn't any proof of that. So I always kept a disposable in my car so I could take
in the heat.
In the heat, yes. But I would keep, I was also on the East Coast. It didn't get as hot. But yeah, I would keep pictures, and that actually came in handy for when I lived in Maryland. I lived in Maryland for a while. I wasn't even there that long. I think I was in Maryland for maybe, I'm going to say 2 years. I was in Bel Air, Maryland. And I was in like 3 accidents. Not my fault. People just like ran into me. I remember using the camera. I was like, I can use the camera. The camera was sort of like the $20 that you keep in your car as well for emergencies.
Yeah.
But I'm like, I can take pictures with the disposable.
Gets an accident. I'm just going to double expose these.
I get real arty with my accident photos.
Yeah.
But yeah, Maryland had some scary drivers, just as a side conversation there. I mean, Phoenix. Yeah. Phoenix, you got some. Wow. I think the problem with Phoenix, the Phoenix driver problem just kind of stems from there being people from everywhere here. So you get this real mixed bag. Because if you talk to anybody in Phoenix, like one of the first questions people ask, where are you from? Because it's very common to, people not be from here. And when you find someone that was born and bred, you're like, oh, whoa, like, okay. But yeah, I think it's because everybody's bringing all these different driving styles from everywhere. So you got like, Midwest people and Northeast people and the West. And it's just this mishmash of people on our highways that kind of...
Sprinkle in some drunk drivers.
You sprinkle in some drunk drivers. You put a lot of gray hair people in there. It gets significantly worse. And the more our population grows, the worse it gets. But even despite how the traffic and how things can be here, Maryland was downright terrifying. And I've lived in quite a few places. I've lived in Pennsylvania, all over the state. And then I've lived in New York City, and I've lived in New Jersey as well in a few places. And you would think they would be like, really bad. But Maryland, what is going on in Maryland? I don't know. But it's completely off topic, but
yeah, it's all good.
Yeah.
That's why you have to have a little disposable camera.
Yeah.
Back in the day, that was the way you did it.
That was the way you did it. Yeah, they were very popular back then. I mean, regular cameras were, popular as well, but
yeah,
the little point and shoots they were handy. Like you went to a party and stuff. I wish I still had my negatives. I wish I had my pictures. I've just, over time, most of the bulk of what I was taking was through the 90s. So it would have been through the 90s into the early 2000s. And then I moved too much and stuff got, destroyed or moved in, because I've lived in many, many, many places. So I've sort of lost all of them over the years. I wish I had them. I try to remember. I'm like, what kind of photos do I have?
Yeah.
Every once in a while I'll find like something. I have a big box of photos, and even those almost got ruined. I actually had a friend, bless his heart. And back in the 90s, I didn't keep my negatives. I was that person. I was the person that didn't keep the negatives. I would always get doubles. I get doubles of my photos, but I would always the negatives, for some reason, always got lost. So I would either put the pictures into like an album or something. I never really kept them in those sleeves that they gave you back. And my negatives ended up, I had a few at one point, but I remember at some point I just kind of made a big box of photos and just put them all in one big box.
Yeah.
But every once in a while I'll go through my big box. I'm like, oh yeah, these are film photos. And I find them. I have one I put on my fridge here not that long ago. My brother. I'm like, oh yeah, I took this at Will. And I'm thinking like, what year was that? And I'm like, oh my gosh, it was like 90 or something. It was quite a bit ago, but.
Yeah. I have a roll somewhere of my parents who got in an accident. We got rear-ended in my mom's Cadillac, her pink Cadillac.
Your mom had a pink Cadillac?
Yeah.
That's amazing.
It was
first off
kind of a crazy vehicle. I missed that thing.
Was that on purpose that she got the...
No, we got just off of 44th Street in Thomas. We were headed to the grocery store, I think, or the library. I don't remember exactly, but all us kids were in the vehicle. I was in the center in the back, and
that's 4 kids.
Yeah, 4 kiddos. But we got rear-ended by somebody going like 90 miles an hour.
Oh, Jesus.
They slammed on the brakes in the intersection and plowed into the back of us. And
But you were driving a Cadillac, so was the car unharmed? Those things are tanks.
We ended up, it had issues driving, I think. So yeah, our car, it was like all jacked up in the back end, but I remember it sitting in the driveway for the longest time, but I just remember pictures of the other person's vehicle, and it was like totaled. Like the whole front end of this guy's red car was like, I forget what type of car it was. It was like a sedan, but totally crunched up, the hood, everything. And the windshield on the Cadillac ended up having a huge crack through the window, or the front, the windshield. And the other guy's car, even though his front end was completely destroyed, not a single crack in his windshield. It's like, what the heck? But yeah, we've got those photos somewhere. I remember seeing them not too long ago, and I was like, oh yeah, that car.
So your mom had the disposable ready to go?
I think they drove by the person's house and took pictures just in case.
Oh, they did it later.
Yeah, it was later. But yeah, I think it was, they were concerned about my mom having like injuries. So
yeah.
They cruised by and we got these like pictures of the car in the front. Yeah, that guy was like, he should have gone to jail, but I don't think he did. So
were you wearing your seatbelt at the time? Were seatbelts in fashion?
Yeah.
Yeah. I remember
Cadillac, so
being in a car accident when I was a kid, and I was my favorite place was in the footwell of the car. Like my family was a non-seatbelt family. The 80s were different. But yeah, we were, I remember being in the footwell. I remember we got hit and I was in the footwell. I don't remember it being that. I was pretty young. I was little, so I could fit completely in the footwell of the back seat.
Nice.
And I know we got hit, but I have a vague memory of that. But I don't think we got hit too hard. But back then, the cars were built a little different. They're a little sturdier for accidents. Now everything crumples up. I mean, it's a safety thing too, though. I mean, it crumples for a reason, but
yeah, it was different back then.
It was definitely different back then. I used to like free roam the car. It's like I just run around. I'd be like everywhere in the vehicle. And they had the big like seats. They had like the, like a couch style seat, which was cool because you could just like lay out.
Bench seats.
They were super comfortable, those cars. It kind of reminds me of your old car. You had what was the car you just got rid of? The
Chevy Celebrity.
Ooh, that Chevy Celebrity. That thing was like nice to ride in. Felt like you were driving a couch.
Yeah, it was pretty fun. It was like a boat.
It was definitely like a boat. It felt like driving a boat.
It's like floating on the ground. It's almost like it was hovering.
Yeah, like it was bouncy.
Yeah.
Yeah, very cool. But not very reliable, that car. We had to say goodbye to it.
Yeah. A little dangerous, but
Yeah, I mean, it would just stop driving. Just randomly.
Yeah.
Like, oh, do you want to go forward? Nah.
Yeah, we're just gonna stop right here.
I'm just gonna stop. You're in the middle of 4 lanes of traffic? It's okay. We don't care.
Throw in my hazards. Because that's what I was.
You got the use of your AAA membership, though.
Yeah, like 3 times. Sorry, don't call me anymore. But my car broke down.
It's on you when it's 3 times.
Yeah.
Might be time for a change.
Yep. So what else do we have going on? We have...
Let's see. Ooh, we have the yard sale coming up.
Yeah. And the deadline to submit is this Saturday, October 21st.
21st, soon. If you haven't got on that, get on it.
Yep.
So you don't necessarily have to be local to Phoenix.
Nope.
And you could get your prints to us. So we're doing both a yard sale and an art sale, hence the yard sale. So outside, you do have to be local for Phoenix for the outside portion. But if you have stuff that you want to sell that's photography related, and that can be any kind of stuff, that can be, digital stuff or film stuff. It doesn't matter, just anything photography related. And it can be cameras, it can be gear, darkroom stuff.
Enlargers.
Anything you got that you're just trying to unload.
Lenses, cameras.
But you will be set up at back. You have to bring your own table. We have a few tables, though. We do have quite a few tables, so we can lend some of them out to some of the folks. I think we have 1, 2, 3, 4, like 6 tables that we have. But we'll put some tables at back as well. But probably best if whoever signs up, and we'll give you details if you sign up, bring tables, but you'll be responsible for doing your own selling or trading. You might even want to just trade with somebody back there. With some of the stuff, but it's going to be during the Grand Avenue Festival. And the Grand Avenue Festival is on November 4th. And that's where our lab is in Phoenix. And that's kind of like the busiest day on Grand Avenue. So if you're not familiar with the area, Grand Avenue is kind of like an arts district that's sort of up and coming a little bit. There's a sprinkling of restaurants. There's a tea shop. There's coffee shops. There's a couple cafes now at the one end. There's a record shop. There's a beautiful plant shop that's right next to us called Pueblo. There's a few bars. There's Wayward that's across the street. And then there's Hawk Salvage, which is really amazing. He does like antiques and stuff. Yeah. And speaking of photography, he has a lot of like glass plates and stuff that he has in there. And he has cameras that show up every once in a while as well. So that's cool.
Yeah.
But that's a really, really, really busy day. So we're going to get a lot of foot traffic. So we'll definitely have a sign out front of our building to direct people back there. Because if you've ever been to our lab, you'll know we're kind of tucked away in the back of the building. But we're in the La Mogosa building, which is like the really pretty building. We're kind of like a teal and, was that teal and yellow? And we look kind of like a
seafoam green.
Yeah, we look like a birthday cake, basically. We have a really, really pretty building with like the spider web ironwork in the front. But we'll be in the very back. That's where our lab is. And we have a courtyard back there. So we'll have the courtyard open and you can come on down and literally sell your stuff. And don't feel like, oh, I don't have that much stuff, or I got too high end stuff. Bring anything, really. But just make sure to sign up on our website first. So just pop up on the Phoenix Revival website and just do the entry for that. And then because we need to kind of know how many people are coming, because we can only put so many of you back there. We've had a few signups, but we certainly have a little bit of room for more. And then we have the art sale, and the art sale is a separate portion. So you could sign up for both, doing selling in the back and doing the print sale, or one or the other. So the print sale, it's photography prints. Once again, this can just be any kind of photography. So we are obviously focused on film, but maybe you don't shoot that much film, or maybe you don't want prints of film. It can be digital as well. In the prints, did we put a size limit on that?
Preferably not massive.
Massive. Don't bring like poster size.
Like 16 by 20 would probably be the max, which I think is kind of the largest for most people. Yeah, you can bring in your prints. We'll have some sleeves for them. And if you have zines we've decided to accept. So we have one person that's going to be bringing in a couple books of theirs that they just did, which will be awesome. And we'll have them all hung up throughout the lab. Have our light table cleared off, as well as our sink. We'll help lay out some stuff in there. So yeah, it'll be a good time. Yeah,
it'd be really good. So you can sell stuff. And what we'll do is when you submit, you can either, if you really can't get to the lab, you could always mail it to us to get the stuff over. And I think the week before is kind of going to be the deadline. That weekend before the sale, we're going to be in the lab doing a big cleanup of ourselves, because we have a lot of stuff we have to go through as well that we could sell. And then people can come in and just drop off. So you don't necessarily have to be there for the Grand Avenue Festival to sell prints, because what we're going to do is, for the print portion, we're going to sell on your behalf. So we'll keep track, and we'll keep names in the back of the prints and keep a running log of who sells what. So we'll be able to get you paid back for selling. So you don't have to be there. So that's super helpful. But if you've ever been like, hey, I want to sell my stuff, and don't feel like your stuff's like not up to par, like, there's something for everybody. And there's also going to be like a wide swath of people coming in that are interests, and I'm always interested in, like, whenever I see a show or I see what's sold, and you look at the red dot stuff and you're like, what's sold? Who bought that? And it's always kind of surprising to me what sells and what doesn't sell. Like, when I had we were talking about the pinhole that I did with the Mr. Potato Head, I had a whole show up for a couple months, and I sold a piece, and the piece that sold is not the one I thought would sell. You never know what someone's looking for, so don't feel like your work's not good enough. It's a nice opportunity to be putting it out and be like, hey, maybe someone wants to buy this, and we're making it nice and easy. So a print and a sleeve is like really accessible to people, versus something that's maybe up on a wall in a in a frame and someone wants to buy it, but they can't buy it right away because it's part of the show. And, this is just a really easy way to make it super accessible for people to buy your work. So, and you can get stuff printed locally through, where would you say to go for that?
There's a few places. I would say Photo Forum or Phoenix Photo Lab or Tempe Camera. Those are all really good places to get your stuff printed. Or even online. You'd be able to order online, or print it yourself and bring it in. But we'll have 8x10, 11x14, and 16x20 sleeves for holding the art. But great opportunity to participate. And then if you're looking for a new camera, this is also a great event because there's a ton of stuff that's out there, and it's kind of just sitting in people's houses and they don't use it anymore. And, they'll bring it out, and this will be, you don't just go online to find one of these things. It's a matter of the community having an opportunity to put it out there to sell it. Is it worth it, their time to bring this out? And, one person's trash is another person's treasure.
Exactly. And you're talking to the person that owned it, so they can actually tell you exactly what's going on with the camera.
Yeah.
So like, oh, light meter doesn't work on this one. I know this for sure. Or this one does this, or I did this to it, or I kept up with it this way. I just had it CLA'd. So you're going to get a lot of information. So especially with film cameras, it's kind of a crapshoot with a lot of them used, especially if you buy them online.
And the other thing too is this is, there's no middleman there. So
yeah, exactly.
You can barter with people and
Yep. You can do trades. So
all that jazz. I think it'll be a great opportunity for the community.
And you can talk to photographers. This is a good opportunity just to come to the lab. So if you've never been to our lab before, you can check out an actual darkroom and see what that's like. We can talk to you a little bit about anything.
Yeah.
Talk to you about workshops. If you've been workshop interested but haven't signed up, you can come in and see the lab and get familiar with us.
Yeah.
And see, we're real people. There's a real lab there. We're not luring you in.
Yep.
And then you can talk to photographers, because the people in the backyard, they're all going to be people of varying levels. Everyone's selling the work in the art portion, varying levels.
Yeah.
Of everybody. But it'll be really great for the public to come in to see that, and for people to come in. And historically, the weather on November 4th is really nice.
Oh, yeah. And on top of that, it'll be our 5-year anniversary.
Yeah.
5 years on Grand. It's insane. I never thought that day would come.
Half a decade.
It's a whole lot of time.
It is.
But we've had the lab there on Grand Ave for 5 years now. It's funny how it all started, but we'll be celebrating nonetheless. And we're still kicking it. We're still doing the thing.
And how long have I been at the lab? When was the first time I came on? What year was that?
2 years now? Year and a half? Something like that.
No, it'd be over that. We've been married for a year and a half.
2 years?
Be over two. It'd be like 2.5, I think.
Yeah.
At this point. It's been a while, because I knew you for quite a while before we...
Time flies while you're in the dark room.
I know. It's kind of crazy, right? Yeah. And the lab's gone through all kinds of changes through the years. So all for the better.
Yeah.
All for the better. Slowly improving our little space, but...
Yeah, hopefully we bring First Fridays back now that we're through COVID and everything. And I don't know. I guess we'll see what happens with future variants. But
I think everyone just decided it's not a thing anymore. At least in Arizona, I see maybe a mask every once in a while, but I don't really. I do hear people telling me they've gotten COVID. That's certainly still a thing. People are still getting COVID, but in general, I don't think a lot of people are super. I think everybody's just well, I don't know. The world is a weird place right now. So I think everybody's just everybody's doing their best.
Yeah.
So I think a lot of people are just you know what? I'm just going to live my life and hope for the best here.
Yeah.
Just about as much as you can do, kind of. But
yeah, we're still kicking it.
I know. So we are. Hopefully we see some of you guys come out. Really hope a lot of folks can come out for the fest.
We'll have popcorn.
Bonus.
Stacy to make some popcorn.
I'll make popcorn. I definitely always put out candies and things, and water and all that really fun stuff. But the Grand Avenue will have lots of stuff too. People have food trucks, and the pizza place will be open right beside us, and coffee truck that's in Pueblo will be open, I'm sure. And then if you're looking for beer, across the street there's Novel Donuts. Novel does or Novel ice cream, but they do like a donut ice cream sandwich if you're feeling adventurous.
Yep.
I think they just opened a tattoo shop over there too, in the little.
I think there's been one. It was like a little.
There's a new flower shop across the street, and there's also a new witch store across the street. I don't know what the name of her store is. I forget. I'm sorry. And then down the road there, the Egyptian hotel, that's officially been open.
Yep.
And they have a pool and rooms. So if you're actually not from the area and you want to come and just stay down there, you could rent at the Egyptian.
Yep.
And they have Chilte, and Chilte is a restaurant that's been getting amazing reviews.
Yep. Still got to eat there.
Yep. And then there's Bacon Nora, which also gets good reviews. That's on the other side of Grand.
Yep.
So Grand has a lot going on. It's just
Popping.
when you come down there, it looks like there's not much going on, but in reality, there's actually a lot going on Grand Avenue.
Yep.
And so, but that festival's a really good time because it's oh wow, look at all this stuff that's actually down here, because everybody opens and gets their stuff going. So
some other art galleries as well that'll be open. So
yep.
To stay up to date on that stuff, you can follow Grand Ave Fest on Instagram.
Yeah, they have an Instagram.
So we'll include those in the show notes as well. But good times. Weather's getting nice, and we'll be a lot more active in the lab doing our own printing. I think we'll be going in tomorrow doing some printing.
Yeah, that's going to be fun. We haven't printed forever. We actually went out to Tempe Camera today and bought 3 boxes of paper because we're going.
We got 3 boxes?
Got 3 boxes.
Oh, geez. That's a lot of paper.
Yes, it is.
Guess we'll be printing.
I know. We haven't printed in a long time. It's kind of funny. There's a few pieces of mine that are up in the lab, but that's really just because I think a photo lab needs to have photos up on the walls. But Dan doesn't have a lot of work up. I think there's one picture two, your one dog and your parents, I think.
Yeah.
They're up on the wall. So we got to get more Dan work. Dan takes amazing photography, but it's so rarely seen.
Yeah.
Dan's not much of a sharer.
Yeah.
he likes the behind the scenes stuff. He likes the process part of it.
Yeah.
Better, but his photos are actually quite nice. So it'll be good to get a little printing. But yeah, we'll get in and do some of our own work. But hopefully wherever you're at listening, you can get out and do a little bit of your work as well. I know a lot of people are going into the winter season. Here we're going into our good season where winter's good here. So we're the opposite of a lot of other folks, and a lot of other folks I can't go out anymore. It's cold. It's going to start getting miserable out.
It'll get nice for us.
Yeah, we're on the other end. We're coming out of our winter basically.
Yep.
Summer's brutal. So now it's under 100 every day. It's yes. It's I think it was 97 today or something. It was this is beautiful.
This is nice.
This is really nice. So yeah, very exciting. But and then we have some of our photo booth stuff's coming up, and you can always follow that on Instagram. So if you ever want to come out and get a portrait from us, we're in the season for that for sure. So, but
yeah, we've got 3 events coming up. So the first one's going to be Phoenix Flea, November 28th, and then the following weekend, the 2nd and the 3rd, will be with Terror Trader in Mesa, and that is Christmas to Dismember.
Yep.
That's going to be a lot of fun. Lots and lots of pictures that day. Last time we did it, we shot 120 portraits in 2 days.
Yeah.
Which for us is a lot.
That's a lot.
And then the weekend after that, we also got accepted into Witchcrafted Market.
The Yule Market.
Yule Market. So
yeah, that's
a lot of pitches.
We're going to be busy.
Yeah, we didn't run out of paper, but preemptively wanted to buy additional paper, and the 4x5 paper is pretty much sold out everywhere. So
yes, it is.
If you're using that, please stop. We need it.
We'd appreciate you to stop. We'd like to use it too.
We primarily use that for our photo booth, and we're actually having to order in some 8x10 paper and cut that down. So, but I did reach out to Ilford, and am hoping that we can start being a vendor for their supplies and chemistry and film. And I guess we'll see what happens with that. But maybe we'll have...
You got to go directly to the source.
Yeah. We're going to use it and we'll sell it. So, but yeah, lots of photos coming up and events. And in December, we're going to do a photo walk as well. So
yeah,
hopefully
that'll be fun with Copper State, right?
Yep. That's December 12th.
What's his hand? Is it Copper State Film? I think that's the handle on Instagram.
Copper State Film.
So he does he reposts up everybody like Arizona photographers' work. And there's a lot of kind of wide swath of people in there that he has. And then that's Cooper
Underwood.
Cooper Underwood.
He's cool.
So Cooper runs that account and we team up with him. So we teamed up with him for our last walk, but unfortunately, it never rains in Arizona, and it rained on our photo walk day, which is kind of amazing. We still had an amazing amount of people that came out though, which was great. But the odds are that it will not rain for this one in December. So we'll have our photo. What's the date on that? Do you remember?
I think it's December 12th. I want to say it's either a Saturday or a Sunday.
Yeah.
But we'll start over at Gracie's and then we'll walk down to the lab and then take a group photo and, hang out, chat.
Yeah, that's always fun. There's always a lot of fun people that show up to the walks, but I think with the better weather will be good. But if you're in the Phoenix area and you want to come out on one of our photo walks, you can come to that. We'll obviously put details out. Our Instagram's always a great place to get all the details of what we're doing and what we're up to in the lab. We'll let you know on there, but otherwise, keep them busy. Thank you guys for listening here to the podcast.
Yeah, thank you.
Next one coming out after this one will be the Film Hound, I believe.
Yeah, we have the Film Hound up next Tuesday.
Yeah, you can check out his Instagram, the Film Hound.
Yep, and really awesome stuff. They do archiving, and it's pretty much, what do you do with your negatives once you're done shooting with them and you don't want to deal with them, you don't want to touch them. You just want to, buy more film, shoot it, and then send it off to the lab to get it developed. And interesting concept, kind of the back end, not really thought about.
Yeah,
and
you kind of forget about it a lot.
Yeah, so it's a cool process. They cut, sleeve, and archive your negatives for you. So we'll be sharing that podcast next.
Yeah, we had a good conversation with them.
We do have a Patreon. And the Patreon
Why do
is
I never say that?
Yeah, Patreon.
I never say that.
Got to plug the Patreon.
Patreon.
We actually got a new member not too long ago.
Thank you.
Actually, today we had a new sign up today.
Thank you, new member.
Yeah. So we do have a Patreon. I'm sure you guys heard it before, but patreon.com/PHX Film Revival.
Yes.
And you can pledge your support for the podcasts and the lab and everything else that we do for the community with Phoenix Film Revival. Yeah, we will catch you guys on the next podcast.
All right. Thanks, guys.
All right. Thank you.